The next hours will be decisive, said the Interior Minister of France, Gerald Darmanin, as he wrote to police officers and firefighters. Social media users who have seen the videos of rioting incoming from France understand that the words of French minister are not just sensational, but depict a grave situation in the country right now. Hello and welcome to the pamphlet. France is burning. This is not me trying to sensationalize an issue, but a ground reality, as the Macron administration has deployed over 45,000 police officers and some armoured vehicles on the streets on Saturday. The cities have been hit by riots and violence for fourth consecutive night. Hundreds have been arrested as the riot police are in full force trying to quell this civil unrest. As usual, social media is filled with various speculations. Many believe it to be the end for current presidentship of Emmanuel Macron, while some perceive it to be a lesson for the country for generously allowing the influx of immigrants from Africa or war-torn Muslim nations. But let's try to find the root cause of the problem or origin of the entire crisis. Before we start with the immediate trigger, let me take a short detour and explain to you something about France. The French have a history of rebelling against authority. If we look at history, the French Revolution, which began in 1789, ended the aristocracy of King Louis XVI, which eventually inspired other revolutions throughout the globe. If we look at the last 50 years, France has seen numerous civil unrests or riots, especially in the suburbs. These suburbs or banlieues were established after the Second World War as the French government was providing social housing en masse. They were initially intended for families from the lower middle classes who commuted to work. However, as a result of the Algerian War and end of French colonialism, as well as severe unemployment and racial tensions, they were progressively occupied by low-income immigrant populations in the 1970s. They were classified as problem or high-risk neighborhood by succeeding governments due to their underfunding and lack of decent housing and employment opportunities. The crime was rampant and young people on the streets frequently engaged in altercations with the police, who were known for having a severe zero-tolerance approach to any disturbance. The French police are quite unpopular with their brutal approach to handling tensions or demonstrations. Human rights groups have often accused the police of rampant racism within the force. Last Tuesday in Nanterre, 2 police officers shot a 17-year-old boy of Algerian and Moroccan descent after they stopped his car. The Nanterre prosecutor's office confirmed that the victim was a 17-year-old boy whose name was Nahel M. He died at the scene and the officer involved is being held in custody on suspicion of voluntary homicide. In the aftermath, people took to the streets of Nanterre to protest, setting cars alight and throwing stones and fireworks at police, who responded with tear gas. Buildings including schools, town halls and the headquarters of Paris 2024 Olympics in nearby Saint-Denis were also set on fire. Since then, the rioting has spread to Paris, Marseille, Lyon, Toulouse, Strasbourg, Lille, and flames are reaching other cities, even as I speak. French President Emmanuel Macron termed the death of young man as inexplicable and inexcusable, whereas the Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin on Friday denounced what he called a night of rare violence. His office described the arrest as a sharp increase on previous operations as part of overall government efforts to be extremely firm with rioters. The sympathies are definitely with protesters who have been on the mercy of racist French police. However, the rioters deserve none of it. A distressing video on social media showed a devastating scene of rioters in France setting ablaze the largest public library in the city of Marseille. Not only it's a loss of public property, but also a cultural loss for the city. The barbaric scenes in French cities have also emboldened questions from European conservatives and anti-immigrant politicians who say that the unchecked flow of immigrants is the reason for deteriorating law and order situation in France and also maybe in the rest of Europe. Now, interestingly, the PM of Poland has tweeted a video comparing the situation of France and his country. Now, Poland is a country which is very strict on immigrants, unlike other European nations which accepted asylum seekers from war-torn Muslim nations. Conservative parties have been claiming for years that European countries, including France, is now seeing a rise in violence due to these immigrants who have not assimilated into the European culture. This situation in France could very well affect entire Europe and even US with presidential elections coming up next year. Not only these riots in France would further reinvigorate the cultural wars in Europe, but it could also lead to a rise in right-wing parties across the continent, which we have already seen in Sweden and Italy. Thank you. If you like this video, kindly subscribe our channel and also do not forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.